Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. That's coming in just a few days, and this is a significant event as far as I'm concerned. Not that I think the eclipse itself is magical, powerful, or anything like that. I think people in power actually do, though. I think some people are seeking to use this eclipse in their occult way of thinking as a kind of way to empower their magic or make their rituals more powerful and effective, and they have a very specific plan. And in this video, we're going to talk about some things we can learn about what they may think is important with respect to this eclipse, what sorts of events are happening at the same time as the eclipse, and what we can expect from them, what they plan to do after the eclipse. All right, so I'm going to do my best here. No predictions, just going to help you understand what's going on. So here we are. This is going to be a lot of information about Thelema, which I think is motivating their actions. That's Aleister Crowley's religion. We'll get into that. Okay, so let's do some observations about this eclipse. First, this eclipse is 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days after the first Great American Eclipse, the August 21st, 2017 eclipse. These two eclipse paths, the August 21st, 2017 and April 8th, 2024 eclipses, their paths intersect roughly over the New Madrid seismic zone in the Midwest, very close to St. Louis and, right here at Missouri, Illinois. This is the X marks the spot sort of location. And, of course, that seismic zone is very famous for generating the largest earthquakes in, recent American history, outside of Alaska at least, going back to the earthquakes in 1812, where apparently the earthquake here was almost a 9.0 on the Richter scale, caused the Mississippi River to flow backwards or something, and was felt all the way into the Northeast, where in fact they just had an earthquake today, a 4.8 or something. But it was ringing bells up here in the Northeast. It was huge. It was a massive event. And anyways, so that's the X marks the spot area. I'm not saying anything's going to happen there, just where it is. This, some people have pointed out. I don't know who this guy is. I guess Chosen Daniel. I don't have TikTok or use it. I found this digging around today because I knew about these paths intersecting in ways that look like important Hebrew letters. So you have here an Aleph right there. There are the Great American Eclipse paths. And you also have the Tav, right? So I am the Aleph, I don't know how to say it, and the Tav, the beginning and the end. I'm the beginning and the end. So some people think this may be an indication that the United States is coming to an end, and the 7-year period marked the beginning and the end of this process. Something like that. Okay. Who knows if they think that's important. It is happening on April 8th, which is the 120th anniversary of the day when Lucifer, Iwas, the holy guardian angel Iwas, they said, Aleister Crowley said, initiated revelation of the Book of the Law to Aleister Crowley. This is a holy day of Thelema. It was in 1904 in Egypt, where from noon to 1 p.m., Iwas, who Crowley himself said was Lucifer, appeared to him and dictated the Book of the Law, which is their sacred book. And it was 3 consecutive days that this happened, April 8th, 9th, and 10th, giving them a 3-day holiday and also giving them 3 chapters in the Book of the Law. Okay. This is important. It is this theology, the theology of Thelema, that is motivating a lot of what's happening, and to understand APEP Goat 2, that animation, and also what's going on ritually and where they are trying, people in power are trying to lead the world. It's important to understand a little bit about what is taught by Thelema. So Thelema, let me do a little bit of that right now for you, from the Book of the Law. Aleister Crowley said it was dictated to him from Aiwass. The 3 chapters of the book are spoken by the deities Nuit, Hadit, and Ra-Hoor-Khuit. Okay, I'll explain them in just a second. But it is about entering the Aeon of Horus. For Crowley and Thelemites, they had an Aeon of Isis from before the time of Christ, so that would be like 2,000 years back then. And then they had an Aeon of Osiris, which was from around the time of Christ until he says 1904, but they still think it's sort of battle. There's a battle between what's left over the Aeon of Osiris and the Aeon of Horus, which is the new world where they're heading. The Aeon of Osiris is about praises, death, resurrection, deities that die and rise. That's why they think, in their opinion, that's why they think it was the sort of the Christian era. Osiris himself was the ruler of the realm of the dead. That's where he rules. So if you look in APEP Goat 2, where does the guy on the boat go? It was right after the man jumps into the water and dies. That what happened. This Horus character, looking like Christ, goes into the boat of Anubis, the boat of the dead, travels through the realm of the dead, destroying it. That's Horus destroying the Aeon of Osiris and what's left of it. And that's why at the end of the film, it's the pyramids being destroyed. Pyramids are places where you put the deceased in hope of a future and so on. Well, that is the realm of Osiris and needs to be destroyed so that the Aeon of Horus can enter completely. The church is destroyed in APEP Goat 2 and a number of other things. Okay, anything related to the Aeon of Osiris is being replaced by the Aeon of Horus, which no longer praises sacrifice. It says, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Do what you want. No more self-sacrifice, no more praising humility, nothing like that. The Aeon of Horus is a post-Christian world. And that's what this book is pushing. The book contains 3 chapters, each of which was alleged to have been written and down in 1 hour, beginning at noon on the 8th, 9th, and 10th of April in Egypt in 1904, as I've already said. Okay, in the Book of the Law, we have, for example, in Chapter 2, I'll show you where we can learn a little bit about these characters, but also including why 9/11 is such a big event, these big events for them, why 9/11 events are important for bringing in the Aeon of Horus, but also who knew it, who had it is, and that these days are actually holy to them. So this April 8th eclipse is very important ritually to satanic occultists. Knew the hiding of Hadit. Nu is a way to say Nuit and Hadit. Nuit is a feminine deity, Hadit masculine. Okay. Come all ye and learn the secret that hath not yet been revealed. I, Hadit, who's speaking in chapter 2 of the Book of the Law, am the complement of Nu, my bride. I am not extended. The calves or cobs in my cobs is the name of my house. Okay, so here we have Nuit, the bride of Hadit. Okay, you can see how, and I'll get into this in more, but let's a little background and symbolism that'll help us. Here are tarot cards. This is tarot card 20 in different decks, right? You can see that they're very, the symbolism still looked Christian-y in the Judgment card, which was number 20. You had a cross, you have resurrection from the dead. That's Aeon of Osiris stuff, okay? Death and resurrection, judgment, cross, all that stuff, okay? When Crowley created his own tarot deck, notice that card number 20 is no longer judgment. It's replaced with the Aeon. And instead of having Christian symbolism, we get the symbolism of Thelema. And here is Nuit. That's a person there. If you look, there's her face, breasts, feet, hands. This is Egyptian way of symbolizing Nuit, the sky goddess. See there, she has an ancient Egyptian art. Okay, the stars, her body parts are like stars and so on. Okay, oops. And in the middle here, yeah, let's do this. Is bigger. There she is. In the middle here, we have Horus has two aspects in Thelema. The silent child god, Horus, who is Harpocrates. See the shadowy looking figure with his finger to his lip. And then behind him, Ra-Hoor-Khuit, the god of vengeance, Horus, okay, who comes in wrath and vengeance to judge and so on. Okay, and down here we have the disc with the dot, the winged disc. That's Hadit. Hadit, Nuit, Ra-Hoor-Khuit coming out of the yoni symbolically. So this is giving birth to the Aeon of Horus, which is why it's the Aeon here, called that. Now, what's interesting, if you look in APEP Goat 2, for example, there it is. What is this? There's Ra-Hoor-Khuit being birthed by the sky goddess. This nebula is representing the yoni, the giving birth of Horus. That's that symbol. And right after that, what's going to happen? Horus is going to start a new day, like the sun god, going through, and he's going to be swallowed into the church. See how it's like a throat? Okay, the church swallows him, and then he's going to be birthed on the other side. So watch. Okay. The water breaks. See the water splashing back there? And out comes Ra-Hoor-Khuit from the yoni of the sky. There it is. Okay, sky goddess. And so the church represents the sky goddess there, the Catholic Church. And in fact, Nuit in Thelema represents Babylon. And so the United States and the church in APEP Goat 2 are represented as Babylon and by the sky goddess. Okay, and Hadit, is represented as this point in the disc, or sperm, or DNA, and so on. Okay, and that's the masculine element. So if we look, here's Hadit. He's considered the violator Nuit, or the beast, and Nuit the Babylon. Point in the center of the circle in the winged disc. There he is, and we see this. Hadit had been interpreted as the inner spirit of man, the Holy Ghost, the sperm and the egg, in which the DNA of man is carried, the elixir of life, or elixir vitae. Okay, the winged disc of Horus, of the sun. Okay, and down here, the secret serpent coiled about to spring. In my coiling there is joy. If I lift up my head, I and my Nuit are one. If I droop down mine head and shoot forth venom, then is rapture of the earth, and I and the earth are one. There is great danger in me. Now notice the serpent being Hadit. He can be, let's see, coiled. If I lift up my head, he can be raised up, and so on. I'll explain this in a little bit because that's related. In fact, I'll do this right here. Okay, what's happening on April 8th? NASA will fire these rockets, 3 rockets, APEP, they're calling it, which is the name of the serpent deity in ancient Egyptian mythology. The nemesis of the sun deity Ra, okay, is being fired up into the eclipse. Okay, so that's not coincidental. In fact, if you go to that song SOS by Take That, it was performed at the Royal Variety Show for then Prince, now King Charles. It says, under mind control, we'll be practicing our politics, defending all our policies, preparing for apocalypse. Don't let the hungry serpent see you. No, 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 no. She'll let you fall asleep, then eat you whole. It's like a bullet to the head. It's an SOS. It's an SOS. It's like a bullet to the head, and so on. Okay, and this is the warning song. We'll get a warning for when this apocalyptic stuff is going to happen. Well, anyways, there may be some ritual Thelemic influence here. Okay, but NASA will fire this into the eclipse, which, again, is not accidental. I think it's all ritually important to them. Let's see. Yeah, and see in APEP Goat 2, the DNA inside the church. So there's Nuit, the church, and Hadit, and the drops, the stones falling, representing the semen coming into this, is going to produce the birth of Horus. That it's a lot of odd symbolism. We see it again here. Notice you have a map of the United States. Behind the woman. And we have the sperm representing what? A stick figure, violating the United States, but also violating the position this woman. And who is this woman? This woman is the quote-unquote whore of Babylon, right? And if you look closely, you have an old and new aspect to her. On her left leg, you have a high stocking, a younger leg, stronger. Okay, right leg, skinny like an old woman, stocking down, nothing trying to be young and attractive about it. The breasts are the exact same. They're targets. And the old side sags and the other side doesn't. Okay, this is the young American Babylon and the old Roman Catholic one. See, and it's being represented as a whore with all the check marks by the bed. Okay, saying how many partners they've compromised themselves with. And Hadit is the one that's going to violate them to destroy them. Okay, to bring about the new Aaron, a new Aeon, the Aeon of Horus. We get the same thing here, same symbolism. Here's the phallic symbolism in APEP, go to in the sky, ejaculating into Nuit, the sky goddess. And here's Nuit, putting her hand down in the direction of the phallus, which has a cross on it. That's where the whore is. Okay, the whore of Babylon represented. That's inside this phallus. Now, you think this is crazy. It is, but why do you think Bezos fired a phallic rocket into space? This is a representation of Hadit penetrating Nuit to bring about the New World Order. Okay, and this is what NASA's going to do with their serpent rockets. They're going to fire them up into this as a ritual. Okay, I think what we're seeing is a massive ritual on April 8th that's inspired by the theology of Thelema. Now, if you keep going, here's why you get 9/11's attacks to bring about the Aeon. Watch. Hadit still speaking. For I am perfect, being not, and my number is 9 by the fools, but with the just I am 8, and 1 and 8. But notice he's 9 by the fools. This is the way he's going to be revealed to the fools. Which is vital, for I am none indeed. The empress and the king are not of me, for there is further secret. I am the empress and the hierophant, or hierophant. Thus, 11, as my bride, is 11. Look, he's 9. Hadit's 9. Nuit is 11. If you bring them together in a union, like this, an attack on her, or the U.S., you get a 9/11 attack, which is the union that will bring about the Aeon of Horus. Okay? Gives birth to them. The union of Hadit and Nuit produces Horus, the new Aeon, which is the new judgment card in their tarot deck. Okay? Anyway, so you keep going. We have their supreme ritual. We'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute. But they're a feast day for the 3 days, a feast for the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law. And there you see, they actually do treat this as a sacred feast period from April 8th to April 10th. And you know, they talk about the death for the dogs. I interpret that to be the people outside of their group. Okay? Excuse me. Pity not the fallen. See, there's no pity in Thelema. No mercy, no pity, no praising of self-denial or sacrifice, no praise of humility, anything like that. There's no exaltation and self-sacrifice. That's from the Aeon of Osiris, the Christian era, which praised the dying and rising, self-sacrificing deity, right? And the post-Christian era with the Aeon of Horus rejects all of that and needs to get rid of Christianity. That's why it's so important for them to make this big change. Anyways, related to the serpent thing, and maybe even calling attention to 5 and 6, they have in the supreme ritual the invocation of Horus. Okay, and this is a actual text for their supreme ritual in the Thelemic works. Okay, they perform it in a certain direction without incense, right? That you can actually read how they do this. Most holy and divine Lord of the Aeon, Ra-Hoor-Khuit, crowned and conquering child. Ra-Hoor-Khuit, the really loud outside motorcycle passing. Okay, the most holy and divine Lord of the Aeon, Ra-Hoor-Khuit. That's the active, vengeful aspect of Horus. Crowned and conquering child. The child aspect being the Harpocrates, child with the finger on his lips. Okay, hear thou this humble but bold invocation of thy presence. What are they calling for? O Lord of the Sun, O God of war and vengeance, I ask thee to enter thy presence and ask that thou wilt aid and guard me in this dark, or in this, I say dark, it's true, in this work of thine art. Strike the master chord, draw the flaming sword, crowned child and conquering Lord Horus, avenger. See, they're calling for, in this ritual, Horus to come in wrath against the rest of the world to bring an end to the Christian era. Now, by this song I invoke thee, in my hand is a sword, thy sword of revenge, let it strike at thy bidding. By the sword I invoke thee, the voice of the 5, the voice of the 6, 11 are the voices, all that stuff. Okay? And every time they go through this section, they're supposed to give the sign of Apophis or Apophis. What is that? It's the sign of the serpent. Apophis is APEP. That's the name of the rockets being fired up. When they're invoking the wrath of Horus against the remains of the Christian era, the Aeon of Osiris as they call it, they make the sign of the serpent deity, and that is part of their ritual. So I think we're seeing like a huge ritual that's being inspired by this. They're calling for their new Aeon to come soon. Now, notice also that when Horus responds, I am the only begotten child of Osiris, my father, and Isis is my mother. And those are the 2 previous Aeons. Okay. He that was slain, she that bore me in her womb, flying from the terror of the water. My apron is of flashing white, whiter than the forehead of morning, and so on. I formulated, you see all this stuff. Okay, he's just going to keep going. I did avenge the horror of death. I am the slayer of Typhon. Whatever. Okay. But we have him coming in wrath and remaining in the sign. The invocation concludes the sign. They're going to continue in the sign of Apophis, or the Egyptians' deity here, of the serpent deity, which is a god of chaos, which is what they're trying to bring about chaos right now. Notice that his mother is Isis. In APEP 2, we have Isis performing magic to bring about the resurrection of the dead Harpocrates, or child Horus. That's from ancient Egyptian mythology, and she performs magic. And notice that the magic looks like terror. It's not a coincidence that after APEP 2 was released, there was a CIA-developed terror group called ISIS. Okay, and they do these acts, and in fact, they just did one on March 22nd in Moscow, which Russia is blaming the U.S. for, because Russia knew, going back to 2023, there's an article about this in May 2023, where Russian intelligence chief, the Russian intelligence chief, was saying that they know that the CIA and the U.S. is training ISIS terrorists for attacks in Russia. And so this wasn't a surprise to them when this happened. When this happened, they knew precisely who did it, and now they've come out and said, after just a little bit of time, that they're in active conflict with NATO now, because they say the U.S. was behind this event. Okay? So, that's ISIS bringing about an attack that leads to the whole set of problems. Now, all right, so there's your possible calling for chaos, destruction, the supreme ritual, and the coming of the wrath of Ra-Hoor-Khuit against the Christian era. That's where we're headed. And Christians and the church and people who hold those values, and all those people are going to suffer, and the U.S. is going to go down with it, as well as the Roman Catholic Church and a number of things. Anyway, so let's keep going. This eclipse is the end of a 7-year period. Remember, 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days. However, it was 7 calendar years, 2017 to 2024. And the exact midpoint of this period was December 14th, 2020. Okay, 1,211 days between the first eclipse in December 14th and 1,211 days between the December 14th event and April 8th, 2024. And that exact midpoint was the rollout of the therapy, the shot for the pandemic. Okay, that happened on December 14th, 2020. It was also the day that the Electoral College vote happened for Biden, and Biden, that election was sort of settled at that point, and Biden went on to mandate that shot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Trump good, Biden bad. Everybody's bad. If they're in politics and in government, they're corrupt at this point. And the people that get that high up are not people we should be supporting on either side. Anyways, it's the exact midpoint. There it is. This is like their mark of the beast, if you want to think of it that way, right? Immediately in the midpoint, that's when they start this. And here's the beginning, and that's the end. Which means if that's for them the end, this is when the big stuff starts, after April 8th, 2024. I'm not saying it doesn't happen on the day. I mean, maybe something happens on the day. I doubt it. I don't doubt that something will happen on the day, but I doubt that it's like going to be the apocalypse all in one day, on that day. But I do think this is where we enter a period that will be terrible. Okay, again, doesn't have to start on the day, but it'll be rough in the period afterwards. And by that period afterwards, I mean through 2025, 6, we're talking a couple years here of development. Now let's keep going. In APEP 2, it's the 5th ring. 2 major conflicts come after it. I think possibly the world attack, then the U.S. comes after that. So I think you watch here the rings. 1. Oh, let's wait till it goes back to the beginning. Okay, that's the end. Here they are. We have 1, 2, 3 rings. Here's the 4th ring. That was the 2021 eclipse in December, and that's when the pyramids get struck. Here comes the April 8th, 2000 eclipse. We have shortly after the eclipse an attack off to the side, and then there was a fast shot at the United States. Now, if you look at Ra-Hoor-Khuit in his boat, he comes out, and what do we have? We have the USA, with the church being destroyed, and he was birthed. See how it's a gigantic yoni in the city that's being overtaken by a tsunami. That represents the United States. That is the same place that was the nebula birthing, because this is representing Nuit giving birth to Horus when it went into the church. Okay, because Nuit swallows the sun every night and gives birth to it in the morning. Okay, and so she one day birthed Horus into the church. There. But anyways, and that's what you're looking at. USA, a symbol of Nuit, which will be violated by Hadit to bring about the Aeon of Horus. Now, that is behind the Ra-Hoor-Khuit character. So here he is. He goes out, and we're looking at this from the perspective of the United States. Here comes that eclipse. The first shot goes away from the U.S., then comes right at and destroys the U.S. See that shot that goes over your head at the end. What I think happens is shortly after the eclipse, sometime after the 4th eclipse here, or 5th eclipse, the April 8th eclipse, right here, boom. An event happens somewhere globally. Maybe it's a world war, maybe it's a major strike, I'm not sure. I think the U.S. is affected, but not probably. I'm just guessing here. But it looks like the symbolism is pointing to something happening away from the U.S. first, only for the U.S. to follow up by being destroyed. And that's the end. Okay? And that's why I think what you have is the U.S. Civil War taking off in probably 2025. We'll talk about that here in a second. We see this 5th eclipse in white noise, okay, pointing to a high-intensity conflict, a war. I think that's probably the war that takes off maybe in the Middle East, Iran, places like that. I'm not sure about the plane crash. Eventually, USA and Catholicism to be destroyed together. Let's take a look at where we go. But White Noise is the film that was released recently. Was it? I can't remember when exactly it was released. Maybe the end of 2022. And it had the airborne toxic event from a train crash. It was filmed in Ohio, and then just a few months later, there was an actual airborne toxic event in Palestine or East Palestine or something, Ohio. And one of the symptoms was what? Deja vu. Deja vu. A symptom of that. What does that mean? It means later on you're going to see something else that reminds you of this. And only a few months after that, there was a real war that began October 7th in real Palestine. Okay? And so I think that was a preview and a warning of what was to come. Now, in this film, we get explicit eclipse symbolism. We have the partial eclipse from October 28th, 29th in 2023. And after this, things start to heat up. He's like steal instead of buy, and he's going to remember these things, shoot instead of talk, and he's going with rage to take out the man who slept with his wife. And he says, "You're a man, Jack." He's remembering. We all know about men and their insane, jealous rage, shoot instead of talk. And he's thinking maybe violence is a form of rebirth, and maybe you can kill death. And the twisted music playing as he's going to approach this motel, which is going to give us a schedule of these eclipses and tell us quite a bit about the April 8th eclipse. So he's going to show up, and he appears, and there we get an arrow saying you're supposed to read this from right to left. Notice the eclipses. 1, 2, 3 of them here. We're going to read this after the release of the film. This would be your April 20th, 2023 eclipse, the October 14th, 2023 eclipse, and the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, from right to left. And these eclipses indicate go, green light, go. Notice the color. This is color TV. You're supposed to be paying attention to the color. Notice the color of the eclipse. It's the same exact color as the color of that light. This is black. This is a red, yellow, green. That's a traffic light symbolism, right? To give us a hint that the eclipses are representing green light, go. And he goes and he looks into one of them. He's going to look through this, and we get this perspective. If you look into the eclipses, what will you see? It's all looking to what? Here's his keys. He's trying to find where Mr. Gray is. It's the only room occupied, and Mr. Gray is in which room doesn't have a key? 8. And notice there's a missing key and a missing number 4. 4, 8. This is your looking through the eclipses. It's all looking forward to the April 8th eclipse. And now he's going to walk away from that window, come this direction, the same direction as the arrow on the motel pointed. He's going to pass that eclipse in the end of 2023 and go straight to this room, the room directly under the April 8th eclipse. See, this eclipse is room 8, which is the key that was taken for the 4-8. Now, if you look, here it is when they pull the body out later. Have the guy out, he's still alive. It's directly under that eclipse. That is the room where all the events happen. Okay, under the April 8th eclipse. What do we learn from that eclipse room? What happens in the eclipse room? Baba. Okay, she symbolizes America and Babylon. She was violated repeatedly by Mr. Rabbit or Mr. Gray. You have to watch my white noise analysis videos, but to see why I call him Mr. Rabbit. And he calls the sex he had with her American sex, and he said she wore a ski mask because she said it was un-American to kiss Mr. Gray. Okay, and so she was very American. And if you look after the shooting, when they're in the hospital here, she and he are together holding hands directly beneath this artwork, and the artwork is the Pope with President Kennedy, both dead in heaven, represented there, holding hands, she in the color of Kennedy, and he in the colors of the Pope. This is the representation of the two sides of Babylon, right? The two elements of Babylon. We saw it in APEP Go 2 as well. That's the American sex, un-American to kiss Mr. Gray, but she still did it and still acted like, quote-unquote, the whore of Babylon, the way they're representing it, okay? And so you get this symbolism very explicitly here. So she's representing the American element, the younger, more beautiful element of Babylon, okay? And yet in that room, he sees in the reflection through his imagination, there she is, with Mr. Gray, okay? That's what he sees, and that's where it was happening. So the the defilement of America with Mr. Rabbit, who was a drug dealer who gave experimental drugs to people that killed them. Now we keep going here. What else do we have? Mr. Rabbit was shot in there, but he'll survive, we're told. Jack, symbolizing the other part of Babylon, the Catholic Church, is shot to death by Mr. Rabbit. Baba was shot with the same bullet, hit them both. And I believe in the film, you may think, did they really die, John? Aren't you wrong there? No, they what they do in the film, hear the symbolism. They're in heaven. You see the light comes in, shines on them. That's a symbol of their death. After that, they go back to their house, and we see them in the house, and that is supposed to represent their heaven, because the film is teaching that you're supposed to enjoy this life right here because it is your heaven. Okay, that's it's a secular outlook on what the fulfillment and the fulfilled life is. Okay, so here's where they die, and then when they go back to that place, in their normal life is supposed to be what they're supposed to embrace as heaven. All right, but it is a representation of their having died. All right, now, okay, Jack in this room, the very white man, because Mr. Rabbit called him, "You're a very white man," right? Jack, the very white man, terrified Mr. Gray with the fear of words, the words falling plane, plunging aircraft, hailing bullets, fuselage, okay, indicating either aircraft, air warfare, terrorism, I don't know, war in general, hailing bullets, okay, so this is, but also a lot of propaganda, because it's the words, because people who took this medicine that Mr. Gray was pushing were susceptible to confusing words with reality, so they couldn't distinguish the words falling plane from a real falling plane, which is why Mr. Gray fell off the bed in terror, even though it was just words. No plane, no sounds of the plane, nothing from really happening. And so we could get a lot of propaganda that's terrifying, trying to frighten people after this. And I think that's also taught in Leave the World Behind. Those who enter do so consensually and therefore must abide by the rules. This is repeated several times in the room. If you come in the room, you do so consensually. And I think the idea there being communicated is if you stick around, they do believe that you are consenting to whatever is going to be done to you if you've stayed in the places that are going to be targeted, like the United States and so on. If you're there voluntarily, and now you've consented and you're going to have to go through it. You were warned. You should have gotten out. We have that same thing in Leave the World Behind. Remember the little girl in Leave the World Behind? She's talking to her mother in bed, and she tells the story of the man who prayed and knew a flood was coming, and they sent a boat to get him and a helicopter to get him. They tried to evacuate him and all that, and he said he wouldn't do it, and he prayed, and he died, and he went to God, and he said, God, how could you let me die? It's not. I prayed all the time, and God said, I sent you a boat, a helicopter, whatever, right? Something like that. And the point was, you weren't supposed to wait. You're supposed to take advantage of the opportunities to get out before this happened, and if you don't, well, it's your own fault. And they think they've given us all enough warning so that if we stick around, it's our own fault. So if you're there, you consented. That's how they're viewing it. This is where they go. We have the intent to murder Mr. Gray. The TV goes to white noise in the room, and you get white noise throughout the room in Jack. So it all represents death. Now another thing in white noise that just points out the importance of this April 8th eclipse. If you look, we know that when they come back after the airborne toxic event, the supermarket even got better, and the butcher has been added, and and one of the things that happens, he calls it a Persian Bazaar, and right after that, in the Persian Bazaar, we get this slaughter. Okay, Persia, Iran, Persian Bazaar. Okay, and the slaughter. I think it's pointing to the war with Iran that's going to be coming very soon. Okay. And that comes after the quote-unquote airborne toxic event. It comes after the attack began in Palestine, which, in fact, we've just seen recently. Israel attacked the Iranian consulate in Damascus, or embassy in Damascus, something like that. Killed a couple generals there. And Iran at any time could retaliate. And we could see this actual conflict coming, just like we see here. But then later in this supermarket scene, we get this. Here we go. We have the Russian missile shoots down a UFO, and then we get these 5 bags, the baggers, all doing it in sequence. This is not coincidental. This is a representation of the 5 eclipses. The August 21st, July 2nd, December 14th, December 4th, and April 8th. A sequence of 5 eclipses, the same 5 rings that we saw at the end of APEP 2 coming off the sun. Now, you say, well, what does it say? How do you know they're eclipses? First, I think this symbolizes it right here with the ring of fire with the black center on his ear. But we also get this correspondence to the 5s. And I'll explain the words and the bags going. Watch. First, we get 5 words. Now, cool, crush, jolt, high C. This is the intercom, the guy speaking over the intercom. Now, cool, crush, jolt, high C. If you map those onto the 5 eclipses, now, that'd be like your green light, go. Start August 21st, 2017. Cool. The July 2nd, 2019 total eclipse, nothing was happening. It was still cool. It's like quiet. December 14th, roll out. The therapy, mandated things. You crush the people. December 4th, 2021 eclipse. Had the slight pause after it from APEP 2. I explained that in other videos. And then you had in the year, at the beginning of the year of the tiger, right there after that, what was it? Russia, Ukraine, Russia, NATO conflict begins. The war begins. This is the jolt. And then April 8th, 2024, high C. I think that represents the high intensity conflict. High C is military, a way in the military to refer to high intensity conflict, high C. Okay, and I think that's what's being communicated here, that we're going to go from, maybe Russia shooting something down, I'm not sure, but into a conflict with the April 8th, 2024 eclipse. Around that time is when you go from the war between Russia and Ukraine and these wars that have sort of shaken the world a bit into the high-intensity conflict, which would be World War III. Continuing, now we go to leave the world behind. Propaganda fear. Wave. What did I type wave there? A wave of propaganda and fear, I think, is what I was trying to communicate. Fall of the USA after, I believe, March 14th, 2025. So let's do a real quick review. You can watch my videos on Leave the World Behind, but it's a new Donnie Darko. We have the primary universe. You exited the primary universe in November with the election in November 2016 into an unstable tangent universe, the Trump world, MAGA world, all of that stuff. At the end of which, in Donnie Darko, if you don't return to the primary universe in just the right way, and all, if everything, it's very sensitive, you can destroy the whole world, right? Well, same thing here. I think what they're saying is with the election in November 2024, if everything doesn't go perfectly well, and they don't expect it to, then you could see apocalyptic stuff happening. And that's when you go to the White House, that's owned by the black man, George Scott, G.H. Scott, who represents Obama, who is the one who occupied the White House before the MAGA president Trump showed up. The time is immediately 11:16 when the white couple shows up to occupy the house. That's a Donnie Darko clock. It's the same clock from Donnie Darko, midnight. Here it is in Leave the World Behind, and it's that clock, 11:16. They're in there that night. We have the couple return. George Scott and his daughter show up, and like, it's our house. and he's like, huh? What do you mean it's your house? And there's a lot of symbolism here. The house representing sort of the ship, and George is the real captain of the ship. And yet he's going to be put in the basement, the lower deck, while the occupiers are in the upper deck. And that's why the ship symbolism is here in the upper fancy master bedroom. You have the view of the sea, whereas down below you have the map of American violence and the lower deck look with all the wood and everything. Now, so that's what's going on. But that night when after they went to the beach, the ship, lost its way, navigation, like the Baltimore ship, which took out the bridge recently. That ship, they were out and they come back and it's 11:16 again on the Donnie Darko clock, meaning when we come back, okay, we left at 11:16, 2016, and we come back and it's like we get a new chance to get rid of MAGA or whatever. And at this time, what happens after it is the collapse of Jenga. They're playing Jenga and their stack collapses when they try to express a little hope, meaning that this is when the whole thing collapses with this next election. And who is the Republican side, the MAGA side? They're the ones that ignore the plight of the Latino immigrant. Okay, and they're going to turn their back and leave them back there to die. Leave her back there to die. And there's going to be a conflict after this eclipse. This eclipse in Leave the World Behind is not a solar eclipse. That is a total lunar eclipse. We're on the moon here. If you're looking from the moon in the direction of their eclipse, the Earth would be on the other side, which means that you would have, from the perspective of the Earth, a total lunar eclipse. That's March 14th, 2025. Right before that is when we get the two conversations in the bed about how this is going to screw them over. And before that, the girl giving the flood story about, you got to take advantage, get out of here before it gets too bad. And she went to a bunker that night because the next day it was over. And so with this eclipse is when the U.S. goes into civil war mode, because the next day, this is when this happens. And here is the Dallas Cowboy, the Lone Star hat on the white guy who represents sort of the South Texas Republicans, survivalists, and all this stuff. He takes his gun and points it right at the federal government, the owner of the White House, who's going to take a gun and point it right back at him, representing civil war. And coming, and we can see that being already in place to possibly happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but with Texas and Governor Abbott and the federal government already having some issues related to what? Immigrants, illegal immigrants, the border, the open border, all that stuff, and how to prevent it. And if this election doesn't go just right, you can totally see Texas and the states that have aligned with Texas and the federal government being at odds and possibly even seeing secession and other violence. But this March 14th, 2025, I think is where this April 8th eclipse is all eventually pointing to as far as the United States is concerned. This Pi 314, March 14th is Pi Day. Pi Day, that's the attack that goes towards the little girl in APEP 2. In the Legend of the Ten Rings and Shang-Chi or whatever, you have 314. A die can't do that. It doesn't. Those numbers aren't on those sides to be able to see it. This is delivered 314, and then you get 1, and then you get 5 dots, and that's the 3.1415. And also in Turning Red, we have, and I explained this in a different video. Here she is a red panda. That's a red moon. She's mooning her other panda, and this panda collapses, it's taken out with this mooning, which would be next year. Now, what does that mean? I think it represents a pandemic of some sort coming to an end, but maybe it won't come to anything. I suspect we still have a chance of an outbreak of some sort where they're going to use that pandemic for whatever their ends are. So we'll see what happens. All right. But in Leave the World Behind, we get the April 8th eclipse here, where he goes. It's in a very intense series of scenes. The music is intense and so on. He goes to the beach after he finds out the satellite phone doesn't work, which means the satellites are out. And his head eclipses the sun. He reaches down, sees this watch in the sand, picks it up, an arm comes with it. He sees there's dead bodies everywhere. A plane had crashed there before. He's startled. Meanwhile, man, I'm forgetting all everybody's names. Yeah, George, well, whatever. he's driving along, and where he's getting propaganda dumped on him. He's terrified, but it turns out it's just a disinfo campaign. He's going to get a bunch of flyers and pamphlets dropped on him, basically talking in Arabic about the end of the United States and so on. But it's only those. It was harmless, practically speaking. It was psychologically troubling, and I think that's what happens at around the time of the eclipse and after. His car goes from 65 to 73. They show that, which could point to the date range of June 5th to July 3rd after the eclipse. Things getting very intense, the fear being very intense to the point where everybody's terrified. You can see their faces. Then it calms down. And the boy says to his sister, they were also in a tense scene, says, dude, calm the F down. It was just a joke. Like, relax. It didn't turn out to be anything. Then the music goes quiet. The intensity, it ceases. And then it actually happens. Some big event right there. Not to say there was nothing happening here, but either way. I'll point out this as I pass these three things. This is Dylar. That's from White Noise. Donald Darko, here's his medicine bottle. Here's the Get Out bingo card that was so important in the movie Get Out. Notice that they have something in common. B is the second letter of the alphabet, by the way. So B4, 2, 4, like a B4, 5, 8, and 8, 5. Okay. If this is the year 24 being represented, and also a before May 8th, that could be before the 8th of May. You can write it that way as well. And notice you have a 6 after as well. B, 4, 8, 5, 6. 2, 4, 8, 5, 6. B, 4, 5, 8. I think it could be hinting at something happening before May 8th. I'm not positive. And maybe it's even pointing to before May 8th, but on May 6th. Total speculation here. I am not going to give a date and say that's what's going to happen. I have no clue, but I'm going to watch it because also if you do a little math from the dates of the eclipse and you do the 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds, and after it, it is May 6th. So maybe May 6th is something to watch. I mentioned that in passing. One of the things that are happening on the event date of this eclipse, the Devil Comet will be visible during the eclipse, supposedly. It's like horned. It's, how to see green horned fireball during eclipse. Cern will be activated. Okay. And we will have a planetary alignment with every planet visible. Okay. Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, and Uranus will be lined up with the sun. Okay. There they are. With the Comet. That's pretty impressive, that line. We've seen that line, these planetary alignments associated with apocalyptic events in various films and other places. You even get a hint of it in Leave the World Behind. I think that could be represented with these lenses, the lens glare dots or whatever. And here you get it almost the same position in APEP 2 at the end, right? This looks like an alignment, doesn't it? The sun and all these objects could be pointing to that. Okay. And so I think what we're looking at is we're at the end of the United States. And that's where it's headed. We're going to see big war internationally probably first, and then eventually get to war, civil war, collapse of the United States in some way, shape, or form. I think that's what it's pointing to. Okay? But who am I? I'm just showing you what I see from these various sources. And this is stuff that you can go and look into yourself, do some research, watch some of the old other videos on my channel, on APEP 2 or White Noise or Leave the World Behind or wherever else. And I'm sure a lot of other people have had really interesting things to say about this eclipse coming up. I don't necessarily think anything's going to happen right on the day. I think it could, but I think we need to be thinking long-term. Eclipses for them govern periods after it, like in white noise. It's the room under the eclipse. It's the period covered by the eclipse. It's not going to all happen on April 8th. I don't know if anything will happen special on April 8th except their ritual stuff. What happens is between April 8th and the next total eclipse, which is quite a bit, I think it's a couple years after, we're going to have a period covered by this eclipse. And what they think they're doing ritually to bring chaos and everything is supposed to cover the period of that eclipse. Okay, so don't, if nothing happens on or that day or even the weeks immediately after, don't be stunned. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see escalations in the wars internationally in the Middle East with Russia, NATO, these sorts of things. Propaganda could become very intense. People becoming very afraid of what's coming through the media and news because of the way it's set up. Yeah, that's what I think we're at. All right. Take care. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and blessings.